A 19-year-old rookie just dominated a Formula One Grand Prix. Kimi Antonelli crossed the finish line first in China, leading a perfect Mercedes 1-2 and sending a shockwave through the championship. But only hours after the race ended in Shanghai, the celebration inside the paddock suddenly turned into something else. Suspicion, because Ferrari engineers have started looking very closely at the Mercedes engine data. Not an official protest, not yet, but a deeper technical investigation into how the W17 produced such a huge advantage on the longest straight of the circuit. Every lap, the same pattern appeared. Ferrari closed the gap through the corners. Then Mercedes pulled away on the straight. Again, and again, and again. According to the technical analysis from the weekend, the Ferrari power unit begins losing hybrid boost earlier on the straight, while Mercedes engine continues deploying energy for longer. That difference may sound small, but in Formula One, 0.3 of a second per lap can decide an entire race. And over a full Grand Prix distance, it becomes a massive performance advantage. So now the big question spreading through the paddock is simple. Did Mercedes just build the most efficient hybrid engine on the grid? Or did the Chinese Grand Prix expose something much more important about how the W17 is managing its energy? Subscribe now, because what Ferrari might uncover in this investigation could change the entire championship. The moment the race ended in Shanghai, the celebration inside Mercedes looked completely justified. Pole position, perfect strategy, and a dominant 1-2 finish. Kimi Antonelli first, George Russell second. From the outside, it looked like one of those weekends where everything simply works. But inside the garages of the rival teams, the conversation quickly moved away from the podium, because engineers began asking a very specific question. How exactly was the Mercedes power unit producing that advantage on the straight? And the more they analyzed the telemetry from a race, the more interesting the picture became. Throughout the lap, Ferrari actually looked extremely competitive. In the opening sector, the SF26 was often just as fast as the Mercedes. The car showed strong front-end grip, excellent traction when exiting slow corners, and very controlled tire degradation over long runs. Those characteristics allowed both Hamilton and Leclerc to stay within striking distance of the Mercedes cars for most of the race. But every time the cars reached the long Shanghai straight, the same pattern appeared. The Ferrari began to lose hybrid boost earlier. Acceleration flattened slightly, and the Mercedes continued pulling away. Engineers described that moment as clipping, when the hybrid system runs out of deployable electrical energy before the end of a straight. Once that happens, the electric motor stops assisting the combustion engine. The car continues accelerating, but not as strongly. And any rival that still has electrical energy available gains speed rapidly. According to the technical breakdown from a Chinese Grand Prix, Ferrari's engine begins clipping noticeably earlier than the Mercedes power unit on that straight, sometimes several hundred meters before the braking zone. And that difference alone can cost Ferrari between 3 and 0.5 of a second per lap in that section. 0.3. Every lap. Across a race distance of more than 50 laps, that becomes an enormous performance gap. And that is exactly what Ferrari engineers are now trying to understand, because the regulations are extremely strict when it comes to hybrid energy deployment. Teams cannot exceed the allowed amount of electrical energy per lap. They cannot simply add more power, which means the advantage must come from something else. Efficiency, energy recovery, or energy management. If Mercedes can recover slightly more energy during braking, or deploy that energy more intelligently throughout the lap, they can extend the hybrid boost further down the straight. And that is exactly what the data from Shanghai appears to show. But there is another detail that has caught the attention of rival engineers. Consistency. The Mercedes engine did not deliver that advantage once or twice. It delivered it on every lap. Both Antonelli and Russell showed the same behavior. Strong acceleration at the exit of the final corner, and hybrid deployment that lasted longer than the Ferrari system. That kind of consistency usually points to something deeply integrated into the power unit design. Not just a temporary engine mode, not just a qualifying setting, a fundamental efficiency advantage. For Ferrari, this creates both optimism and frustration. Optimism because the SF26 chassis is clearly competitive. The car is stable, responsive, and extremely effective at managing tires during long stints. But frustration because the power deficit remains visible. Even when the Ferrari drivers execute the lap perfectly, even when they exit corners faster, the Mercedes simply gains the advantage when full power is deployed. That is why Ferrari engineers are now studying every available piece of data from Shanghai. Energy recovery patterns, battery deployment curves, electrical efficiency, every tiny detail that might explain why the Mercedes hybrid system appears to sustain its boost longer on the straight. And in Formula One, investigations like this rarely stay quiet for long. Because once one team starts asking questions, every other team begins asking them too. And the moment that truly revealed the difference between the two engines happened right at the start of the race. For a few seconds, it actually looked like Ferrari might challenge for the lead. Lewis Hamilton launched brilliantly from third on the grid. The Ferrari SF26 showed exactly what its engineers had promised all weekend. Outstanding traction, immediate response from the rear tires, and a very stable front end under braking. By the time the cars reached the first sequence of corners, Hamilton had already placed the Ferrari right in the fight with the Mercedes. For a brief moment, the crowd in Shanghai saw something unexpected, a Ferrari attacking the leaders. But then the field approached the long back straight, and that was the moment everything changed. Antonelli tucked into the slipstream. The Mercedes hybrid system deployed its electric boost, and suddenly the W17 surged forward. The Ferrari simply could not match the acceleration. Within seconds, Antonelli passed Hamilton and reclaimed the lead before the braking zone at the end of the straight. That single moment became the perfect summary of the entire weekend. Ferrari strong in the corners, Mercedes dominant on the straights. From that point onward, Antonelli controlled the race with remarkable calm. For a driver still early in his Formula One career, his composure was extraordinary. He managed the tire degradation carefully, maintained the car within its ideal operating window, and kept a comfortable gap to his teammate Russell behind. At several points during the race, the margin between the two Mercedes cars fluctuated between 5 and 9 seconds, depending on traffic and pit stop phases. But Antonelli never looked truly under threat. The Mercedes pit wall focused on one simple principle: control the race, avoid unnecessary risks, and protect the 1-2 finish. Their strategy was conservative but extremely effective. Every pit stop was timed to keep the cars in clean air. Every decision prioritized stability rather than aggression. Because when you have the fastest car on the grid, the biggest enemy is not speed. It is chaos. A safety car at the wrong moment, traffic during a pit stop, or unnecessary battles between teammates. Mercedes avoided all of those risks. Meanwhile, Ferrari ran a very different kind of race. Hamilton knew early that attacking the Mercedes cars on the straight would be extremely difficult. So instead, he focused on maximizing the result, managing the tires, protecting the podium position, and keeping the car within the optimal performance window. Leclerc followed a similar strategy behind him. The result was a very solid finish. Third for Hamilton, fourth for Leclerc, a result that confirms Ferrari as the second strongest team in Shanghai. But it also highlights the same limitation that Ferrari engineers are now studying so carefully: the power deficit. Every time the Ferrari approached the Mercedes on the straight, the same thing happened. The gap slowly increased, not dramatically, just enough to prevent any realistic overtaking opportunity. And that is exactly why Ferrari engineers are now analyzing the Mercedes power unit in such detail. Because if the W17 truly has a more efficient hybrid deployment system, that advantage could define the entire early phase of the season. Hybrid efficiency is one of the few areas where significant performance gains are still possible in modern Formula One. Even small improvements in energy recovery or deployment timing can translate into several tenths per lap. Over an entire championship, those tenths become decisive. Right now, there is no formal protest from Ferrari, no official investigation, only careful analysis. But inside the world of Formula One engineering, analysis is where every major technical battle begins. Teams compare data, study patterns, and slowly begin to understand where their rivals have found an advantage. And once they understand it, they either copy it or they challenge it, which means the real story of the Chinese Grand Prix may not be finished yet. Because while Antonelli celebrated one of the biggest victories of his young career, the engineers across the grid have already started working on the next chapter of the battle between Mercedes and Ferrari. But what really made engineers across the paddock stop and look twice was not just the speed of the Mercedes. It was how clean that speed looked. Because usually, when a car has a straight line advantage, you can see the limits. The engine pushes hard at the beginning of the straight. Then the electric deployment fades. The speed stabilizes. That is normal behavior in a hybrid Formula One power unit. But in Shanghai, the Mercedes looked different. Antonelli's car did not seem to run out of energy at the end of the straight. The acceleration stayed strong almost all the way to the braking zone, lap after lap, which immediately raised one key technical question inside the rival garages. How is the Mercedes engine sustaining its electrical deployment for longer? Because under the FIA regulations, every team has the same limits, the same maximum electrical energy per lap, the same deployment restrictions, the same recovery systems. So if one team manages to extend the electric boost further down the straight, the explanation must come from efficiency. Either they are recovering more energy under braking, or they are losing less energy during deployment, or their software is distributing that energy across the lap in a smarter way. And that is exactly what Ferrari engineers are now trying to understand. Because according to several technical observations from a race weekend, the Ferrari engine begins clipping noticeably earlier than the Mercedes power unit on the Shanghai straight. That earlier clipping means the Ferrari loses its electric boost sooner. Once that happens, the car relies only on combustion power, and the Mercedes, still deploying hybrid energy, continues accelerating. The result is exactly what fans saw during the race. The gap grows slowly, but inevitably. That is why even when Hamilton exited the final corner perfectly, the Mercedes still pulled away before the braking zone. It was not a mistake from the Ferrari driver. It was a difference in energy deployment. And that difference is now the center of attention across the paddock. Because hybrid efficiency is one of the most valuable advantages a team can have in modern Formula One. It affects qualifying speed, race pace, overtaking ability, and even tire management. If a car reaches higher speeds earlier on the straight, the driver can defend more easily, attack more confidently, and control the race from the front.